What if the safest place in medieval Europe was not inside a castle, but hidden beneath the dirt? Snow drifted across the western coast of Ireland, while entire villages disappeared into winter darkness. Wind slipped through timber walls. Frost spread across packed earth floors. Fires burned low long before dawn, and families pressed together beneath rough wool blankets, trying to preserve enough body heat to survive until morning. For millions of medieval peasants, winter was not a season. It was an annual siege. Livestock froze inside poorly insulated shelters. Grain stores rotted from damp air. Smoke from indoor fires poisoned lungs while still failing to keep homes warm. The average rural house in Northern Europe leaked heat almost as quickly as a fire could produce it. Once the flames died, the cold returned immediately. And yet, scattered across Ireland, Scotland, Germany, Cornwall, and Eastern Europe, archaeologists discovered something strange. Entire underground worlds. Stone-lined tunnels hidden beneath farms, chambers carved into earth, ventilation shafts engineered with astonishing precision, storage systems capable of preserving food for years, defensive passageways designed to trap raiders in total darkness. Some stretched over 70 meters long. And the deeper researchers looked, the stranger the mystery became. Because these were not desperate holes dug by starving people. They were engineered systems, built centuries before thermodynamics, airflow physics, or soil engineering were formally understood. The people who built them left behind no scientific texts. But somehow, they understood the Earth itself could become a machine for survival. Most medieval homes in Northern Europe were catastrophically unprepared for cold climates. The walls were usually made from wattle and daub-woven hazel branches packed with mud, straw, and animal dung. Roofs were covered with reeds, heather, or thatch. Timber frames warped with moisture. Wind penetrated nearly every surface. To modernize, these structures appear picturesque. To live inside one during a wet Atlantic winter was another matter entirely. When temperatures dropped below freezing, interior temperatures often hovered only a few degrees above the outside air. Fireplaces lacked chimneys for much of the early medieval period, filling homes with smoke while wasting enormous amounts of heat. The fire became the center of existence. When it burned, survival was possible. When it died, the house turned hostile within hours. Modern experiments with reconstructed medieval homes reveal how severe conditions truly were. Condensation formed constantly on interior walls. Bedding absorbed moisture from breath and smoke. Respiratory disease spread easily. Malnutrition weakened immune systems already under assault from cold stress. Winter killed quietly. Not always through blizzards or starvation. Sometimes through exhaustion. Sometimes through damp lungs. Sometimes through one night, slightly colder than the last. And medieval people understood something terrifying. The surface itself was the problem. At roughly 3 to 4 meters below ground, the Earth behaves differently. Surface weather begins to disappear. The soil stabilizes near the region's annual average temperature, roughly 46 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit across much of Ireland and Northern Europe. Even when snow covered the fields above, temperatures underground remained relatively stable. To medieval builders, this must have felt almost supernatural. The deeper they dug, the quieter the cold became. Packed clay, limestone, sandstone, and glacial till possess immense thermal mass. These materials absorb heat slowly during summer and release it slowly during winter. The Earth acts like a gigantic thermal battery, smoothing violent seasonal temperature swings into something survivable. Without scientific vocabulary, medieval peasants discovered geothermal stability through direct experience. They dug wells, storage pits, drainage trenches, and eventually they realized something extraordinary. The ground itself protected life better than any house they could build above it. This realization changed everything. The underground systems that followed appeared across Europe under different names. In Ireland, they became known as souterrains. In Cornwall, fogus. In German-speaking regions, Erdstall tunnels. Slavic communities built their own underground refuges beneath settlements and forested hillsides. For centuries, historians underestimated them. But excavation revealed a shocking level of sophistication. These systems required coordinated labor on a massive scale. Some projects demanded the removal of over 200 cubic meters of soil. Stone had to be quarried and transported manually. Oak beams weighing several tons were lowered underground without cranes or modern lifting equipment. Everything was done with muscle, rope, leverage, and communal organization. And the engineering was precise. In unstable soil, builders used cut-and-cover construction. Massive trenches were excavated first. Dry stone walls were then assembled underground using corbelling techniques, where each layer projected slightly inward until the structure formed a self-supporting arch. No mortar, no steel reinforcement, only geometry and gravity. Some ceilings still survive after nearly 1,000 years. The deeper archaeologists studied these structures, the harder they became to explain. Ventilation shafts created natural airflow circulation using temperature differentials. Warm air rose upward through concealed vents, while cooler oxygen-rich air entered through hidden entrances below. It was a passive air exchange system, an underground lung. Drainage systems controlled groundwater using sloped floors, stone channels, and sump pits carefully positioned at low points within the tunnel network. Some chambers maintained remarkably stable humidity levels year-round. Others were optimized for food preservation. And that may have been the greatest breakthrough of all. Because grain is alive. Wheat, barley, and oats continue slowly respiring after harvest. Above ground, fluctuating humidity and temperature trigger mold, fungus, insects, and rot. But underground, medieval peasants discovered a biological loophole. By sealing grain pits airtight with clay, stone, and organic material, oxygen inside the chamber was gradually consumed through respiration. Carbon dioxide levels increased until insects suffocated and microbial growth slowed dramatically. The grain essentially protected itself. It created its own preservation environment. Centuries before microbiology existed, peasants were manipulating atmospheric chemistry through observation alone. But warmth and storage were only part of the story. The medieval countryside was violent. Raiders could appear without warning. Viking attacks scarred coastal regions for generations. Clan warfare, feudal conflict, cattle raids, and banditry made rural life dangerously unstable. And underground, ordinary people found an advantage: darkness. Souterrain entrances were intentionally concealed beneath homes, ring forts, barns, or earthen embankments. Some looked like drainage ditches. Others vanished beneath movable stone slabs hidden under straw. Once inside, the architecture became a weapon. Passages narrowed until attackers were forced sideways. Crawl spaces reduced movement to hands and knees. Tight choke points eliminated the advantage of swords, shields, and superior numbers. Many tunnels forced invaders into complete darkness. The defenders already knew the terrain. Every turn, every obstruction, every dead end. An armed raider crawling blindly through a stone tunnel became vulnerable to the simplest weapon imaginable: a spear, a hammerstone, even gravity itself. The greatest challenge may not have been engineering. It may have been fear. Humans are not naturally comfortable underground. Darkness, confined spaces, and the crushing weight of Earth trigger primal survival instincts. Yet entire communities repeatedly entered these chambers for generations. Children carried spoil during construction. Families sheltered underground during raids. Workers processed grain beneath oil lamps for hours at a time. So how did medieval people psychologically adapt? Part of the answer may have been spiritual. In Ireland, some underground chambers became associated with monastic isolation and sacred retreat. Ancient inscribed stones were incorporated into tunnel walls. Christian crosses appeared beside older pagan symbols. The underground space transformed from a hiding place into something sacred. A protected threshold between danger above and survival below. Oil lamps flickered against wet stone, while prayers echoed through chambers hidden beneath frozen fields. And perhaps that symbolism mattered more than we realize. Because fear becomes manageable when a place acquires meaning. No single family could construct a souterrain alone. The labor requirements were simply too enormous. This was collective engineering. Entire villages contributed food, manpower, timber cutting, stone hauling, excavation, and maintenance. Skilled masons shaped corbelled arches. Carpenters assembled oak reinforcements using mortise and tenon joinery identical to techniques used in bridges and mills. Knowledge passed through generations. A grandfather began the tunnel. His sons expanded it. His grandchildren added ventilation shafts and storage chambers. These were not temporary shelters. They were inherited survival systems. And that may be the most important detail of all. The people of medieval Europe were not passive victims of climate. They were adaptive engineers, poor in resources, but rich in accumulated practical knowledge. And then, slowly, the underground world faded. By the 12th century, Europe was changing. Stone castles expanded centralized military control. Agricultural productivity improved. Chimneys transformed home heating. Larger surface granaries replaced underground storage systems. Political structures became more stable in some regions. The hidden world beneath the villages became less necessary. Some tunnels were intentionally sealed. Others collapsed from neglect. Entire networks vanished beneath fields and forests. For centuries, people forgot they existed at all, until archaeologists began uncovering them again. And what they found challenged one of history's oldest assumptions, that medieval peasants were technologically primitive. Because buried beneath Europe was evidence of sophisticated environmental engineering built not by kings, but by ordinary people trying to survive winter. Today, modern earth-sheltered homes use many of the same principles: thermal mass, passive temperature regulation, natural airflow systems, subsurface insulation. The science now has equations and technical vocabulary, but the core idea remains ancient. When the surface became hostile, medieval people adapted by changing their relationship with the earth itself. Not conquering nature, working with it. And perhaps that is why these underground chambers still feel haunting today, because they reveal something uncomfortable about human history. Civilization was not built only in castles, cathedrals, or royal courts. Sometimes it was built underground, by exhausted families holding oil lamps in the dark while winter raged overhead. If you enjoy exploring forgotten engineering, survival history, and the hidden intelligence of the ancient world, subscribe to Shadows of Valhalla, because some of humanity's greatest inventions were never meant to be seen.